Hey everyone, welcome back to the Bent Method podcast. I'm Keelan, we got Jared, and then we got our first guest, very exciting. His name is Phil Jenkinson. He has been a mentor of mine, I guess, could call him a second dad.
Former landlord of mine.
Former landlord of
that's
Jared's.
right. I almost forgot about that.
How could you forget?
Different time. We'll talk about that.
Phil has also been a former moto parent. His son no longer races and is in the Army. That's also exciting stuff. But Phil works in the environment and renewables and environmental industry.
That's right.
We won't really go too far into detail with that, but you're also an entrepreneur.
You betcha.
Investor. Do you call yourself an angel investor, or what would you call yourself?
I call myself a savvy investor.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Sophisticated.
The school of hard knocks and of investing. That's what I refer it to as.
I see.
That's right.
Well, Phil's always been he's kind of guided me along throughout the years with not so much moto, but more so my life and my finances and just anything that I've maybe felt lost with. He's kind of been there for me. So we felt he would be a good addition to the pod and has some valuable insight. So.
Excellent. Thanks for having me, guys. Yeah, I've known you guys since you were like 8-9 years old. A long time. I've seen a lot of things.
Yeah, seen us grow up as young men and racers, and it's been a journey, but you've been there right there with us.
Yeah, it's been cool. And I mean, I don't get to the track. Geez, I haven't been around the track for 5 or 6 years now. But I watch motocross. I watch the standings. I see what's going on, and when you guys are doing your nationals, I try to follow you and see what's going on and who's winning and who's crashing, and I always have my fingers crossed that nobody's getting hurt, because the people that know me and seen me around the track for years know that I was pretty relentless when it came to safety, and probably call me a pain in the neck to some people because I was never a racer myself. I never ever raced, but I always seemed to be there for the big crashes, and that bothered me sometimes.
I think you're being a little modest, though. Like, I think you're a little more connected than you give yourself credit, and you've been a supporter of mine for at least that 1 year, and we were pretty well connected. But I think you're a little more connected and have an eye on the sport a little more than you give yourself credit.
Yeah, well, I mean, once my son stopped racing, I just kind of followed you guys, and didn't go to the track, and didn't just wasn't around, and but I always hope that especially here in Calgary, that the Wild Rose motocross track is always there, and always kind of had my ear to the city of Calgary goings on. I have some insight there to some development things around the city, and I was always just curious to make sure nothing involved that motocross track, because that's a great place to be, and I made some great friends and had a lot of good times over there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, it's definitely a great outlet for no different than going to a hockey rink or a soccer field. It's just another outlet for kids to kind of grow up and mature and find themselves, and that was definitely the case for the both of us. And but we were kind of chatting a little bit before we came live here.
Yeah.
But you mentioned that there's some pretty crucial people that played a part in keeping the track running.
Yeah, I mean, I did a little stint on the board of directors. I helped them to get a water truck 1 year, but the core group of people that are over there are amazing. I don't know who's on the board now, and whoever those people are, I mean, I'm sure they have a high level of passion and contribute as everybody does. But when you talk about people like Dustin Heikkinen, like David Pinkman, those guys, that place wouldn't be there without them. The as I was kind of stepping away from the sport, like when Brody left, and the new people coming in probably have no real idea of the amount of work and sacrifice that those guys put in. And not to take away from other people that I haven't mentioned. I mean, anybody who's been on the board, they all deserve a pat on the back. But Dustin Heikkinen has lived and breathed that place since he was a kid, and David Pinkman, and Chris Bonneau, who's no longer with us. People shouldn't forget about those people, and they should really have a big plaque over there or something with their picture on it. Maybe I don't know.
Yeah,
like there's been that track for me. I've met people there that are going to be my lifelong friends now, and so is my son, and I wouldn't have met those people if that track wasn't there. And I hope that the city of Calgary continues to let it be there. It's important. It's important for families. It's important for you guys. And I'm sure you could tell this story, about dozens of other tracks around the country in North America, about those people that are in the background that really never get the credit until something goes wrong. And then, oh, well, he didn't do this and he didn't do that. But, you got to remember the good that people do. And I'm not quite sure everybody knows that.
Yeah. And I think we take it for granted big time. Like, we're so lucky with that facility we have right downtown. I probably have the biggest community of riders in the whole country. And I think, lots of times guys like to bitch about the track or this and that, but we're super lucky to have a groomed track, 2 groomed tracks every day. And I think we take that for granted a little bit.
Yeah, right in the center of the city.
Yeah, it's crazy.
10, 15-minute drive after work. And
you don't see that anywhere else, not even in California. Really, like you can see downtown from the track. It's crazy.
Yeah. It's it's definitely a world-class facility for sure. And I think you're definitely right there. Like, I think with saying that there's some people that or a lot of people that really don't know how much has been invested into keeping that place going. And I think, like, as I get older and the more kind of or feedback and knowledge I get from I guess the elderly members around there, it's definitely, it's been a journey. And even I can remember back to like younger amateur days when the track was almost being shut down for noise bylaws or the city threatening to mow it down, and we had a whole fund in the backup to go buy another property. It's kind of wild that it's actually still there. It could be a golf course at this point.
Well, and I got a group of guys together, and we thought maybe we'll find a piece of land around the city somewhere and we'll go in on it together. And it's a tough thing. Like, you could throw all kinds of money at that and it'll never happen because the communities outside, they don't want it. And some of those reasons are valid, but you can't just throw money at something like replacing the Wild Rose motocross track.
Yeah,
you can't. The money's might not fix that issue if the city rears its head, and and I hope it never happens. I really do. I mean, there's another guy that put a tremendous amount of work in there, and that's Shane Upshaw and Landon King.
Yeah,
those guys, they were passionate about making that place. And I understand now, like, Charlie Johnson is, does a phenomenal job of the track prep there, and And there's so many people that I should mention that, but there's so many people that have come and put their heads together to make that place work. I remember one time there was some noise complaints from a guy across McLeod Trail, and I drove over there and parked in front of his house and got a bunch of guys on 450s to go over the finish line jump, and I was trying to hear, and then like the C train goes by, and it's louder than anything at the motocross track, or the red light on McLeod Trail changes and the cars go by, and all you guys jumping over the finish line jump was drowned out by. So I mean, I don't buy the noise thing.
Yeah, even just Deerfoot Trail.
Yeah, exactly.
From Ogden, you can hear Deerfoot Trail over the bikes.
Yeah. I think the thing that, they do a great job of is the dust mitigation, and I would assume you can't start bikes on Saturday mornings before a certain time, so 9
or 10
o'clock.
maybe.
Yeah, so I mean, those things have been in place for a long time, and I'll go back to like Dave and Dave Pinkman and Dustin Heikkinen dealing with those issues on a regular basis. And the average guy that pulls in, in his toy hauler and all this stuff, and pays his $500 to ride, and if it's not quite perfect, he's all up in the air. Well, slow down and take a look around and ask some questions, and brush yourself up on the history to see some of the stuff these guys have done. And I hope that doesn't ever get forgotten.
Yeah. But like, so with a lot of that being said, like, do you think like it's come a long way, but like in your opinion, what do you think would maybe change a bit of that stigma that's like, it's been such a long road and we've come a long way with the public and the people outside of the sport, but yeah, what do you think would, like, electric bikes, like obviously, but that's so far away, and
well, even dust is a problem, right? Like people complain about the dust.
Yeah, but it's like I guess it's a tough sport as is, but I'm sure there's little things as a community, like, I mean, that's, as a racer and as I've matured over the years, that's something I pay attention to. Is it's not just about me anymore. Like I'm trying to be a leader and an ambassador for the sport, and I want to see the sport grow. But so you try to pay attention to what's gonna help with our public image and what's also gonna pull the public in. And I mean, like you've expressed to me in the past, at least, that there's some things that you feel are kind of lacking with the sport. But on that note, like with just like the negative stigma about our sport in general, like, is there what comes to mind?
Well, I guess when you say negative stigma, like, what do you mean by negative stigma? Because to me, the negative part of the sport is it's expensive. It's crazy expensive.
Mm-hmm. I guess, well, for now I'm saying like that's a given for sure. Yeah. But like with I guess like at first glance, before anybody looks at the price tag on a bike, like at first glance, like what do you think turns people away from our sport? Because like we said, it's been a tough road for the track coming up. Like there's the noise and there's the dust and
right.
But do you think like injuries, or it's?
I think some families think that the sport's just too dangerous for their kids, and they stay away from it. I don't know how you're going to change that. Some families just feel that way. Other families are more open to let their kids try different things. And hey, if a kid falls over and breaks his arm, well, hey, he can fall over and he can fall down the stairs and break his leg.
Yeah, and then you got my dad cutting casts off when I was 10 and 11 years old. So
that's right.
It goes complete 180, right?
Well, yeah. going to the track, I'd always when I'd see the ambulances come and stuff, and sometimes it was minor, and there's been a few that have been major, right? And I'd always feel sort of like, geez, the ambulance is rolling in out of the track. The optics of that are bad.
You hate to see it.
How can we cut back on guys getting hurt? Like, do you slow the tracks down, or the 450? They just too much bike, right? For most people,
I think for the average guy,
right?
probably.
And then, when my son played high school football, I go to the football games. There's just as many ambulances packing people out of the football field. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, when I look at it from the outside now, I think of family with a couple kids, couple boys, couple girls, whatever it is, want to go buy a couple 250Fs. Like, that's 20 grand.
Yeah.
Right. That's a lot of money. So it's a big investment for a family. I mean, I think it's a good investment. I think it's a good group of people. I think it's a great place for kids to be. And I think I've heard many people say you accept the danger of what happens. Could happen, right? And some guys barely get hurt. Some guys get really hurt. But I think you could say that about lots of other sports too, as well.
Yeah,
right?
well, like a lot of times guys will have major crashes and they'll walk away from it fine, but then you tip over in a corner and you break your arm.
Right.
And that could happen doing anything.
Well, yeah. Like, I mean, Brody got hurt.
Yeah.
Tumbled with a 450 and it fell on his chest and it burnt him. And
remember that.
He's scarred for life. But he argued with me, imagine that, before he went to ride about putting his chest protector on. And, Dad, I don't need it. It's hot. It's 30 degrees. 10 minutes later, I think it was Darren Collins who was out there and pulled the bike off him. Who happened to be out there riding and he did. He saved him from being hurt worse, and because he was there. And I know that Brody was always thankful for that. But I look at racing. What's negative about racing is the finances, and something that I've embraced in the last, especially the last 3 or 4 years, is change and trying to look at things in a different light. I refer to it as the Phil's disruptive factor. Disruptive. Disruptive. Right? Teachers at school called me disruptive. And when you look at the definition now of disruptive, my teachers were all wrong about me. That wasn't disruptive behavior. That was thinking outside the box and shaking up the norm. And I don't think in society in general we do that enough. Now, you don't have to be aggressive and rude and challenging people in their face all the time, but just be disruptive.
Yeah.
And I think the motocross industry needs a big shakeup. And a lot of people are going to shake their head at me when I say this. I look at a business and I look to see where it can be efficient. And motocross is a business. For it to be successful, it needs to be efficient. And I pull into the track and there's a $400,000 semi pulling a 240-pound motorcycle to 10 races across the city, across the country. Mm-hmm. And I've never been able to figure out why teams do that. Now, people say, it's the show and the big trucks and all the advertising and that's, and that's what brings the people in. Well, I don't agree with that. I think that these teams should be racing out of sprinter vans and with less people, paying the riders more money.
more money to go around for everybody else and the
Yeah.
amateurs.
Exactly. And, you know, you look at how many, you know, kids you could support coming up that are loyal, that are going to stay in the game, if they get a little bit more help.
Yeah.
Now, I'm sure someone's going to crack out a spreadsheet and say, no, Phil, you're wrong. And this semi pays for itself. But, you know, I've had truck drivers work for me. I've had trucks before. There's nothing about them that are efficient. Truck drivers are expensive, the good ones, because they're hard to find now. And, you know, I just can't figure out why the industry doesn't shake that up a bit and put more money into the riders and the programs, the amateur programs. Because I mean, I don't know for a fact, but I doubt that our amateur programs up here rival like the Team Green or the KTM programs.
Not even close.
In the States. Well, why not? Right? Is it economies of scale? There's not as many riders here as there, right? But I mean,
yeah, I think that definitely plays a factor,
right?
Because I mean, our population is so much smaller in Canada, but
right.
Doesn't mean that we can't have a strong community, even though it may be small.
Yeah, I just think that motocross in general needs to become more. The sport itself needs to become more efficient. And I know when I used to go watch the nationals, I'd see those trucks in the distance, and I'd just be like, "What? It makes no sense to me." You know, especially now with these sprinter vans. You know, wrap them in your logo. Anybody can drive it across the country. Or
so we did with Sky Racing. It was actually super efficient. Had a super nice awning. Like looked super professional. Like you don't really need a semi.
Yeah.
And then that just frees up a lot of your budget to spread around, right?
Right.
Yeah, for sure. The Sky Racing rig definitely.
It looks good too. I mean, it's professional.
It's the best looking sprinter in the paddock. You might be the only one, but it looks good. But on another note, I did get to ride under a semi this year, and it was pretty sweet.
Luxury. It's that luxury life now.
So let me ask you this question. Would you rather be cool in the big semi or have more salary?
Make some money off of.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what I was going to add is it's really, I was actually like talking to one of my sponsors about this a few days ago, and yeah, all the semi really is for is it's the ego. Like, I mean, you can do the same job. A sprinter can do the same job a semi can.
Right.
You can hire all the same personnel. Right. You can have the same mechanics or whatever, right?
Yeah. You're not paying the insurance you are. You're not paying all the international fuel tax agreements. You're just a sprinter.
You send a big truck into the shop now, like a semi, with a check engine light. You could walk out with a $13,000-$14,000 bill.
Oh, yeah.
And you know that.
Oh yeah, I know that.
Right? Your dad knows that.
Mm-hmm.
I know that. Right? And I just think to myself, 4 miles, 5 miles to the gallon, right? To go to 9 races. Like, guys. And I'm sure I know one guy in particular is going to be listening to this. He's going to be shaking his head at me and he's like, "You don't know what you're talking about." And I'm like, "Oh, well, maybe I don't." But I'm a fan that's walked through that park for 12 years or longer. And every year I'm like, all I hear about is racers not making enough money because there's just not enough money to go around. And I look over and there's a NASCAR rig parked there. And I'm like, well, guys, shake it up. Right?
You know what else? I guess I think another way to look at it too is maybe the manufacturers and all the sponsors look at that like it's a selling feature for the families and the kids to be like, wow, if I make it big, I get to go under there. Like, it's not as exciting to go under a Sprinter.
Well, that's because that's just what you know, right? If all you knew was a bunch of Sprinter vans that looked super clean and professional, then I don't know if it'd be much different.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's true. So
right, Jared. Right.
Yeah.
And that's the whole thing about change, right? And I can talk about this now because I've changed my life like big time. I drive an electric car. I live in the smallest place I've ever lived in my life. And I am the happiest I've ever been.
And what did you change from?
Oh, dude, I was all over the place. I expensive cars and a house that was too big and just all the gear. And I realized one day that all that stuff was just making me pissed off, and it was distracting from what life's all about, and it's not important. And there's people out there. I know there's people out there they work hard. They're friend. I know them. They're friends. They got Corvettes in their garage and they got big houses and they're happy, and that's fine. Be happy. But I'm happy doing what I'm doing, and my friends have beat me up a little bit over it. Yeah, because they don't quite understand it. But I mean, that's just what works for me, and my son's even questioned it a couple times, but I'm happy. I'm happy. So I believe that less is in a lot of cases better.
Less stress, more happiness.
Simplicity is the ultimate sophistication, right? Mm-hmm. In my opinion, and we clutter up our lives with so much stuff we don't need, and it distracts from what we really want to do.
Yeah, for sure. I think too, it's like, it also goes to say, like, you could say why fix it if it's not broken, but you could also, why not challenge it too, just to see like better. If it is broken, because you never really know.
I call it the Phil's disruptive factor, right? Shake it up. Now I say that I listen. I try to listen to everybody, and in the past I knew everything. And when you stop listening to everyone, you shortchange yourself. You do, and you don't have to do what people are telling you to do. Listen to everyone, and listen to everyone's experiences, and be caring about those experiences. Put yourself in other people's shoes sometimes, and it helps you understand things a little better. Right? So a little less emphasis on the rigs, a little more emphasis on the rider.
Mm-hmm. Well, you see that in the States, right? Like, I think a lot of the reason the States is so far advanced is because they have, obviously they have more population, they have more money to go around, so they have more money to feed the amateur program, and that's what builds it, right? Like, a lot of I don't know many amateurs, there's probably maybe 2 or 3 that are getting really good support, and that's able to help them build their program to where it needs to be to go to the pro level.
Yeah, it could still very well be on the same ratio up here as it is down there.
It's maybe on a smaller scale.
Yeah, maybe we're on a smaller scale, but maybe, it's just...
You take a little money out of the...
Yeah, maybe there's just a little too much, like, for the amount of, I guess, gross that is in our industry, it's just maybe there's a little too much being invested in the wrong areas.
And we've all seen it. And dad goes out and buys big motorhome, big trailer, and then there's certain expectations on the kid. And if the kid's not living up to those expectations, father-son conflict.
See it all the time.
All the time, right? And I did it. Bought big fifth wheel, expensive truck, and Brody and I took it to a race. He's like, "Dad, this is stupid." Right? A year later, I sold it. We bought vans, right? And we stayed in hotels. And when I think back to some of the best times that we had, was sitting in hotel rooms, and in between races, and I miss that. I don't miss the motorhome and the trailer and all that crap. But again, that's just my opinion. For those people that out there that have it, I'm not, not criticizing you. It just didn't work for me.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so yeah, I have a pretty funny story about a hotel room with Brody. I thought maybe he was getting to be a little bit, always wanted the nice stuff. And so I was going to fix him, right? And we went to Raymond. And I thought, we'll go to Lethbridge the night before. We're going to stay in the crappiest hotel I can find, right? I don't know. It was like, well, Dad, we could stay at this hotel because it's got a pool, and those rooms weren't that great. And I don't know how old he was. He was like 12, maybe. We had the van and the bikes in the back of the van. So I was like, all right, I'm going to fix him. That's it, right? Like, enough of this. And he was never like, don't get me wrong, he's not like an entitled kid or nothing, but I just saw something coming, and I was like, I'm going to be a smart dad here. I'm going to get this covered off. I bought a room. I can't remember the name. I don't know if it was a Travel Lodge or something. Man, it was a bad hotel, right? Like $60 a night, right?
Are you leaving a review right now for Travel Lodge?
Well, the hotel itself wasn't bad. Like, it wasn't bad. It was just a cheap hotel and on the wrong side of Lethbridge, right? So there is a wrong side. Anyways, so we pull in and get a bite to eat, go to the room, and fall asleep. And half hour later, a bunch of Harleys roll in. Bunch of bikers with their girls, and they're partying in the room next door. And Brody's like sleeps kind of through it for the most part, but night goes on and the bikers leave for the most part, except biker buddy guy and biker buddy girl, and they start doing what bikers do, and woke Brody up, and I had to explain to him why that was going on and what it was, and yeah, the next weekend we went to Medicine Hat. Stayed.
What were they doing?
They were
I'm immune to all this.
making other bikers, I guess. I don't know. They were doing the thing.
What do bikers do?
They were doing the stuff,
I mean, I'm a biker, and I do burnouts and
they were
wheelies.
doing the stuff. They were doing the dirty stuff. You could hear it through the wall.
Oh.
Brody was like, Dad, what are they doing? I'm like, they're wrestling. Don't worry about it. Go back to sleep.
I do that stuff too.
Yeah.
How old was he?
He was like 11 or 12, and
Nice.
and I had to sit there and listen to him for 2 hours, right?
So did you regret getting the hotel?
Just to teach him a lesson, and the kid slept through the whole thing pretty much. So, but yeah, so that was our hotel story. But
so you recommend Travel Lodge to
yeah, I remember driving back from California with him and staying in hotels along the way, and and he'd do his typical teenager thing and drive for 2 hours and tell me he was tired. I'd drive for 10, and you know the deal. You guys have done it to your parents, right?
No, I drove the whole way to California one time.
Is that right?
Yeah.
The whole way straight?
Yeah, we drove straight through. I think my dad might have drove for a couple hours.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, we were driving a minivan down there, and the sway bar, like, I don't know what it was, a sway bar or something in it must have been broken, because the thing would just go like this. I don't know, like anytime you like did a slight turn of the wheel, the thing would just be bouncing around. Yeah. We got it looked at and we got that. Oh yeah, this thing's busted.
Yeah. That was the time we went down there. That was another one of my
when you camped out. Yeah.
That was another one of my I'm gonna show Brody how this is done the tough way. And we went to the campground Keelan was in, and we slept in a tent. We slept in a tent for like 6 days or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And we had a pretty good time. Like,
that was good. That's a nice little campground.
It is.
I was thinking about that the other day.
Yeah.
I lived in I called it my tin can. It was basically a massive fifth wheel. Yeah. And I was one of the spoiled, rotten kids that had all the nice stuff, at least for a minute. But
hey, don't get me wrong. I'm not calling kids that have that stuff. I'm not calling them spoiled, rotten kids. I'm not. That's not my intention. What I'm saying is that stuff didn't work for me, and I realized that's not what racing is. Racing is what you're doing on the bike. What are your ambitions? Mm-hmm. What are your goals? What
lessons are you learning?
What are you learning? What do you not? Hey, well, Dad, my bed and my toy hauler is not very comfortable. I'm like, what? Shut up. Like, get in a tent, right? And
I guess for me, like I see it as spoiled rotten, and after the fact, because when I look back on that, all that stuff is you don't, yeah, like you said, you don't really need it.
no,
But I also I don't know. I'd like to think that I appreciated all that stuff because just with the way I was raised and how my parents
well,
kind of treated me throughout the course of my young career, I feel like I didn't take it for granted.
Well, yeah, I think that's just like a part of the sport. Like, to be honest, like if you're racing motocross, you're probably like you're pretty well off. It's not a cheap sport to get into. And just because you have all the stuff doesn't necessarily mean that they're not, your parents aren't teaching you lessons. Like my dad made sure to teach me lessons, even though, he was spending a good chunk of money going racing.
Yeah. No, and like that's why I say I want to be real clear about that.
Yeah.
That I just because a kid, steps out of a motorhome with his gear on, that doesn't make him, little Johnny Snotnose, right? I just don't. And the same goes with how we set bikes up. Like Brody had some nice bikes with all the bits and pieces and the stuff on. That wasn't him. That was me. That was me saying, "Oh, I think you need another set of wheels." I don't think I ever changed the tire at the track. Like, $1,000 or whatever it was back then for another set of wheels. Like, and I think that can be intimidating to some people coming in that don't have a lot of money, and then they see that sort of stuff and they're like, "Oh, I don't think I could keep up with this," right? And and people do get themselves into trouble financially because of racing. There's people out there. I've seen people get divorced over it. I've seen families that have divorced because the one side of the family wants to take it to this level, and the other side of the family is good having it right here. Well, that's a recipe for disaster. Yeah. And then poof, I've seen it.
And it probably happens more than you think, too.
But you know what? It happens in other sports too.
Yeah.
I grew up playing hockey, and I saw it in hockey. I know, like, friends of mine's kids are in hockey, and if you let it, it can happen anywhere. And I think you have to keep it grounded. You got to keep things at the right level. And you go back to saying about having the fifth wheel in California. I remember walking through that campground, and that lady stopped. I don't know if you remember this. The lady stopped me and said, "Is that your son?" And I said, "Yeah, he's sleeping in the fifth wheel. I'm sleeping in the tent." And I said, "No, it's not my son." And she says, "He's just such a nice young man, and every day he comes back from the track and he's washing his bikes and he cooks his food, and he's just this nice, polite young guy." So I mean, you weren't a snot-nosed kid in a fifth wheel, and and because I've known both you guys from a very young age, I know your dads. I know what they're all about. There's not you guys there. I know what's going on. Like there's nothing easy. There's nothing easy about working with your father, and that father-son relationship. It's tough enough. Then you throw work into the mix, and it can be a handful. I bet you I can play a scenario out that's happened to you without you even telling me. So Jared's a welder, right?
Yeah.
He's working in the shop, put in 5 12-hour days, and then he's coming home and he's training and he's looking after his place and doing all the stuff. And on Friday at like 4:00, Jared starts to stop for 5 minutes to lean on something to text his wife that he's what's for dinner. And his dad walks through the shop. Hasn't seen him all week because he's been in the office busy. But his dad walks through the shop. Oh, there's my kid leaning on the bloody post again, doing nothing. Right? Am I right?
Yeah, it's probably happened. I don't know. My dad knows me. I work hard at work.
Yeah.
I make sure just because of that. Like a lot of people think that because I work for my dad, I have this cushy. Oh yeah, take whatever time off you want. No, it's the opposite. When I'm sick, he calls me like, "How sick are you really?"
Yeah,
and that's how it is.
And I've seen it with you and your dad, Keelan. Right? The father-son dynamic is, it's tough. It's tough. And then you throw working together. Like Brody wouldn't work for me. He wouldn't work with me. He said, "Dad, I saw how you were with your dad." So, I mean, I guess I was a bad enough dad. He joined the army to get away from me. Right?
Yeah.
You know?
I think that was one of the hardest maturing experiences for me, was just learning how to manage the relationship with my dad. Like that was growing up, as far as just maturing through different aspects in your life. That was like the hardest one, learning to see eye to eye, or just like managing day-to-day life with that specific relationship. And I'm sure I think everybody has that relationship with at least somebody, and it's bound to either be your mom or dad.
Yeah. We love our parents. We love our parents. I know you guys love your dads. I know you guys, and I know you guys have your issues, but take comfort in the fact that all father sons do.
Yeah.
Right. And something that's hard for us as fathers not to do is to bring up the fact of what we've done for you. Right? The whole scenario of what? Like, I buy this and I do this and you're going to go drink beer tonight? Like, how dare you have a night off and have fun? Like, forget it. Get on the bike, get to the gym, do that. And then poof, bang, crash, boom, there's a fight and nobody's talking for a week. And right. And, it's when you're working with family, it's easy to fight. And us as fathers, sometimes we throw that out there. Hey, well, I've done this. How come you're not? And you guys don't want to hear that. I know you don't want to hear it. We don't want to say it, but there's something in our head that just goes blah, and we say it, and then the damage is done, right?
Well, let me ask you this, if this makes sense to you. My dad will probably strangle me the next time he sees me, but
I think you take your dad, by the way.
Huh?
I think you take your dad, by the way.
Yeah, probably.
You couldn't hit your dad.
He's not as tough as he thinks.
Guy's a puss.
Sorry, Randy.
No, this is what my dad does to me, and I think it's kind of hysterical now, just because we're in a different place and things are good. But I just think it's kind of funny now. But it's whenever I work for my dad, like I drive. I mean, whenever racing stops, I'm in the seat of a truck pretty consistently, and usually, when September rolls around, that semi really doesn't stop till the end of January or whenever I head south, basically. Yeah. And it's what trucking's like. It's just nonstop, and especially throughout that time of year, because that's just the busy time, like October, November, December. It's just
the fall run. Yep.
Yeah, you're in there like nonstop. So there's no time for anything else. Well, I'll be working like 16-hour days or 12 to 16-hour days. Like the only other time there is in the day is for sleep.
Yeah.
Won't be training, start looking a little pudgy, whatever. My dad will say, "How come you're not training?" I'm like, "What? Really?" And then the reverse will happen during the season, or like February, March, April. I'm all into moto. Like, if I'm going racing, there's nothing else. Yeah. That's just how I am. I put everything else on the side.
Yeah.
Then my dad will say, "Well, I need you to work." And then I'll say to him, I'm like, "Hey man, this is like this is the bed you made. You got to lay in it." Yeah. Like, I didn't have to race dirt bikes. You could have just made me a farmer or something.
How'd that go over?
It's usually a fight, and then it kind of tames out.
But yeah, I guess I might be part of that problem, because like I'll call your dad. I'll be like, "Hey, I need like 10 trucks to do this."
Make sure you send Keelan.
No, I don't. I actually, no, I don't think I've ever said that to him. I'm just like, I need some trucks to do this or do that, and like, what the struggles you have with your dad that you find as struggles. The reason I call him is because he never says no. Like, he never says no to the customer, right?
Yeah.
Because he's like, here's the customer. I got to go do the work, right? So, he hangs up the phone and he's like, "Well, Phil called and needs 10 trucks or whatever." And it's not always as ridiculous as what we did that one year, but
yeah. Right? And then I'll get a call and I'll be down in California and my dad say, "Hey, I need you to come home for a couple weeks.
Yeah, Phil called. He needs some trucks, right? Right, and then
Dad, I'm at Glen Helen right now.
Yeah.
What do you mean?
What do you
just get on a plane and come
That's like
haul
a-
some loads for Phil. Like, what's your problem, right?
Yeah.
Like, right? So, I mean, it's and Brody, he didn't want anything to do with that relationship, father-son working relationship. I still hope someday, like when he comes home from the military, that there'll be something that him and I can do together. But he's not coming home anytime soon. So, but yeah, but I can tell you this, as much as you guys disagree on stuff or have your arguments, or your dad, like whenever I talk to your guys' dads, it's just like, well, Jared did this, Keelan did that, and it's like their chests are puffed up and they're proud of what you guys do, and like it's a father-son dynamic. That's what it is. My mother told me that I was a terrible parent because I was too strict, and that's what caused my son to join the military. Like, you can't win, right? Sometimes as a parent, people say there's no book to being a parent. There is no book to being a parent. There's people that write books that think they know what they're talking about parenting, but you're doing it on the fly, right? And even as your kids get older, we don't care about you less. We probably care about and worry about you more, right? So just put that in the back of your head, right?
Yeah, they just want to push you. I know my dad will come out in the shop sometimes. I don't see my dad that much at work, maybe a couple of times a week,
Right.
but he'll come out in the shop and he'll be like, why are you doing it this way? And then the next time I'll be doing it the way you told me. He's like, well, why don't you do it this way? So it's just like there's always looking for something to kind of, I don't know, maybe push you in the right direction, or
Right.
I don't know, make you think more, maybe. I don't know.
Just
If they
habit.
if they didn't care,
Yeah,
I wouldn't
for
talk to you at all.
Yeah.
Right? They're just like, whatever, right? You gotta remember that too. Like, put yourself in their shoes, right? Sometimes during that conflict, put yourself in their shoes and just look at it from their side. And I do that more and more as I get older.
I find I do
It's
that
just like,
too.
why is this guy acting like this today?
Yeah.
He's not normally like this. And and you find out, oh, his kid's sick, his wife's spending his paycheck at the bingo hall, and it's building up on him and it's about to pop. And you just happen to took it out on you that day. That doesn't mean that's who the guy is, right?
Yeah.
That's just what happened to come out at that moment when you wanted to talk to him, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So
It's all a matter of perspective.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that's important. And it goes back to my whole change philosophy that people don't slow down and look at all the pieces enough,
Mm-hmm.
and go back to the racing structure. It's kind of from a professionalism business standpoint. Like, I can't believe that guys don't know what they're doing in December, January, when racing starts in, like, if you want to go south, you need to go when? Like next month?
Yeah,
Right?
basically.
And you don't know what you're doing? Like, I guess, and again, there's probably people out there, oh, that guy doesn't know what he's talking about. And I'm like, well, from a business perspective, why can't you plan that? What is wrong with our industry that so many guys are waiting to the last minute to get some sort of deal put together?
Yeah.
If we want our sport to be better, treat the athletes better. Treat them with more, like, I think, did I read right? Did Honda already sign 2 guys?
In Canada?
Yeah.
Yeah, they have Tanner Ward and Dylan Wright.
So that was done like what?
They did that right after the season was
So
done.
so if they can do that,
multi-year deals.
yeah. So if they can do that, why can't everyone else?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a tough one, because like maybe every team is structured differently, and money's coming in from different areas. I know some of the people I'm talking to, it's more
Right.
More of the funding is manufacturer based, and then that's all based on bike sales. But there's also a lot of other teams that the team owners are just multimillionaires, and they know how much money they got in the bank, and they can make a decision
Right
then and there. So yeah, I don't know, that's a tough one, but you're right, it makes it really hard for anything to kind of have any momentum.
Well, yeah, exactly. And I have a little note here. Goals without timelines are just dreams. Like, how do you set a goal without knowing what it's going to be.
Yeah.
Right. Like, you know, that's just talk. It's just, oh, I'm going to go racing next year. Or, you know, I'm going to improve the efficiency of my welding shop. Okay. Well, what are you going to do? Well, I need to get a better deal on steel. All right. Well, when are you going to do it? Well, we're going to get to that. No, like, when are you going to do it? Like, I've gone into businesses to try to help them before. And they're like, well, I need to save money on this, and this. And I'm like, well, when, how, what? And I look at this racing stuff and it's like, we can't treat these guys better to tell them what they're doing a few months after the season's over. Does it really take 6-8 months to put a program, or 6 months to put a program together? And maybe there's, like I said, there's people are going to watch this and go, yeah, it does. Okay, well, why? Why does it take 6 months to put something together? Why can't we change that? Why can't we help these guys to get to the next level? And so more guys don't drop out, right? You know, and I just sit back and I watch that and I don't understand it. And something else I don't understand either is, like, I look at the Blackfoot shop, like the Blackfoot store, right? The place is a powerhouse, right? I mean, they sell everything. Do they not have a team anymore at all?
No.
Like, that's sad. What happened that they don't have something put together? A store of that caliber, right? I mean, I know, like, Blackfoot Direct, Dean Thompson over there has a program and has guys, I'm assuming, right, that ride for him, and he's always helped people. I mean, he helped my son at one point, but why doesn't Blackfoot have a team? You know, he's one of the biggest. Is it not the biggest store in probably Western Canada?
Probably in the Western Canada, yeah.
And they don't have a team.
Well, I think, like, for them, and I mean, I've only ever heard little tidbits, but, like, I think it's Pat and
It's Jason.
Pat.
I just don't think they're interested in doing
Pat Connors Pat and Jason.
Pat, Jason, and who's, I can't remember who they are.
Right?
But no different
Doug.
than you. It's like things involve numbers, and if the numbers don't make sense.
Yeah, but I'm not selling motorcycles.
Yeah,
I'm not selling motorcycles.
Right? And
I'm not selling motorcycles.
Maybe they feel kind of dumb that they're selling motorcycles.
Well,
but it's
I don't know. You know, I don't know. I don't know.
Or maybe their passion just went away. I don't know. Maybe that's a question.
Maybe it takes the right couple guys to reignite that passion by being disruptive.
Maybe.
And thinking outside the box and talking to somebody that stepped away from the sport for a while and saying, what can you do for us if we do this for you? Right? Because I've never had any bad experiences in that store myself. I bought everything. I just bought some stuff from them I bought some little, what do you call them? Utility vehicles from Mr. Newman. Ron Newman, how are you? Good guy. Go to Blackfoot, see him. He's a good guy.
You get a commission on that?
No. But I just, maybe I have too much of a broad outlook, you know, outside eyes looking in. But when I see a store like that that's not out there and in it, I wonder why.
Well, maybe that's just part of our sport, like the problem with our sport in general. Like, it's not really worth their time and all the money. They're not really getting as much as they could be out of it.
Right. I know. You know, and then when I read stories about, is it JDR Honda that signed those?
GDR Honda, yeah.
Yeah, you know, they hired 2 Canadian guys.
Yeah.
Makes me want to go buy Honda stuff.
Yeah.
Sure does. I mean, I don't know if you guys want to get into that conversation about Americans and Canadians, but that just, when I read that, I think I read it on Direct MX right after the race season. And I thought, you know, makes me want to buy a Honda. I'm a Canadian guy. And that I like that. And but first I liked it because they put a deal together right away.
Yeah.
Those guys know what they're doing. They can plan, you know, they can plan their fall, winter, and training, and yeah.
Well, I think, like, being a guy that's kind of stuck right in the middle of all that, and kind of being like a bubble guy that's on the edge of being a privateer and being a factory rider, like, I'm right in the center, and I know a lot of the people I talk to and the business dealings I do with just trying to line up things year after year with my career, it's, yeah, like I said earlier, like every team is structured differently. And
Right.
like I think with the Canadian industry being so small, it's really difficult to rely on manufacturer support because, yeah, there's only so many bike sales. And that's where maybe like, yeah, the Pat and Jason at Blackfoot, that they were just outside guys that had a passion for racing, happened to have a bike shop, but they wanted to start a race team. And they're probably losing money every year on that team. And I don't think there's a single team in Canada that actually makes money, but it's those guys behind the teams that are putting their own hard-earned dollars just because they like racing. Like one of my team owners this year, like, has spent thousands and thousands of dollars year after year to go racing just because his dream was to run a race team.
Yeah.
And
good for him,
that's
by
what
the way.
he's spending his money on.
Yeah.
Like, my hobby is going snowboarding. I like to go spend my money on snowboarding stuff or mountain biking stuff.
Yeah.
I'm losing money. I'm not making money on it. Like, that's my hobby.
Yeah.
For them, like, running a race team is a hobby, but it's those guys that makes our sport run.
I can assure you that those guys that had the Blackfoot team were making money. Those guys are savvy guys. You don't build a business like that losing money on something year after year. I think Honda pulled out, went their own route with their own stores, and the deal went away.
Then they went to Yamaha.
Yeah, and went to Yamaha, and maybe that wasn't just as good. I don't know. Maybe.
I heard it was just getting, like, I think you're right there. Like,
right.
Those are, I've met Jason. I've met Pat as well, but I've had more conversations with Jason, and yeah, it was just, is getting cut in half more and more and more. And that's the thing, is like trying to rely on the bike sales to run a race program is really difficult.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think you're right. Like, they're smart businessmen, and
they're very smart guys.
They're probably just sick of losing money.
I could tell you, there's nothing I'm going to invest in for the love of it. Like, nothing. Because there's certain things in your life that you do that you love that take money from you, whether it's riding your bike or snowboarding, skiing, whatever, right? But there's nothing I'm going to invest in if I know I'm not going to make any money, and I'm just doing it because it makes me smile, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'll go to Vegas, put it on red. That makes me smile, and I know I'll lose, right? Yeah. So, I mean,
I guess that is a good question, though. Like, I truly believe that there are guys, like, I seen it firsthand. Like, my team did not make a cent this year. They went over budget, right. And just with some mishaps, like, and that's going to happen. Like, we had some blown motors and etc. But it's that is a good question, though, to know, like, how much people are investing and how much are they actually losing on the sport. Like, most of the team owners I know are all very savvy businessmen, but it would be interesting to see their books behind their teams.
I just, I hear stories of guys racing in the 80s and they made money, right? Top guys were making money, and there were no semis back then. Box vans with a couple guys tooling across the country, and they made it work. Same amount of races, some of the same places,
and they're probably making more money too.
Making more money. Like, wouldn't it be nice to step away from a sport with money and not debt?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And that's what I don't want to see for any of you guys, is to chase something for so long that by the time you hit 30 or early 30s, you're 10 years behind financially, because you've been chasing something that is expensive, right? Mm-hmm. And that's not quitting. Like, that's not quitting. And that's where I say, this racing is a business at especially at your guys' level. It's a business. And if the business isn't making any money, guess what? It ain't going to last very long before the bank comes calling. They want their shit back, right? And more importantly, I think, and I know this. There's times in your life that are very important that affect the later on financially. And I see people do it all the time. They get behind the 8 ball in their 30s, and it gets worse in their 40s, and they roll into their 50s, and they got a big mortgage and 10 grand in RSPs, and they want to retire when they're 65, right? So what you guys do now is very important to what happens then. Well, I'm not telling you to quit racing. I'm not. What I'm suggesting is to think outside the box to ensure that the system doesn't knock you backwards. That's what I'm saying in that statement, right? And there's lots of things I'd love to do when I was younger, and I shelved them. I shelved them because I couldn't afford to do it anymore the way I was going, and there's other things I wanted to do. And when I look back at it now, I didn't want it bad enough. You guys still really want it bad. I can see it. I can see how hard you work. I can see the efforts that you put in. Just got to find a way to do it a little bit different. Break up the mold. Phil's disruptive factor.
Start a podcast.
Yeah,
Start a
there you go.
podcast.
Do you want to
I went
sponsor our podcast?
I don't want to sponsor nothing.
Oh.
I went to this thing yesterday called The Art of Leadership. And there's 1,000 people at the Telus Convention Center listening to 4 different speakers. And all those guys were doing was telling their life story. That's all they were doing. But it was interesting. It was interesting. And it was from a leadership perspective, right? A couple little tidbits I picked up. I never thought of it this way. People talk about your strengths and weaknesses. Your strengths are your opportunities, right? Think about that. It's not just, I have strengths, I have weaknesses. No, your strengths is who you are. That's what you can do. And take those strengths and bundle them up in a package that's appealing to somebody, right? Instead of just sending out the same old resume to the same old people that say, we'll get back to you. Just do it different. Try it different. Go see Jason Mitchell. What's stopping you from going knocking on his door saying, let's get this going again?
I actually kind of did and didn't want anything of it.
Yeah, I talked to him last year too. He's like,
nothing ventured, nothing gained, right?
Yeah, there you go.
Sitting on the couch gets you nowhere.
Yeah,
not that you guys sit on the couch, right?
No.
But when you have a business, and I've said this for a long time, when you have a business and you're passionate about it, you're putting everything into it, you should never need a break from it, right? The race, and I get it. You guys physically need a break once in a while. You need to step back, let your bodies heal, whatever. But if you're truly, truly passionate about it, you should never, ever need a break. Your wife might tell you we have to go on a vacation, right? Or we're going somewhere and we're turning our phones off for a week, but shouldn't need a break from it. Yeah, and that's when you really, truly know that that's what you should be doing, right? Yeah. I am very fortunate. I've been very fortunate in my life to work with people, the best people, period. I didn't plan it that way. I was blessed to be surrounded by people that are positive, that care about people, that look after people, look after the environment, do the right things. And I'm glad it worked out for me the way that it did. It's allowed me to venture off and do other entrepreneurial things and get my feet wet in other areas. And that's taught me to think outside the box and to not be afraid of a challenge, but not to get sucked into something stupid, right? Because so many people do that. So I see it all the time. Hey, I got this deal. Give me 50 grand. I can make that. there's a lot of bad people out there, right? Bad people take from you, the good people give to you,
Mm-hmm.
and just be careful. Just be in this, however you guys play out this next 3, 4, 5 years, however it falls into your racing plan. Um, keep surrounding yourself with those good quality people.
Agree. I think that, just the way kind of society is, just trying to feed you through the school system. They're trying to fit you into this mold. They're not really teaching you to think outside the box, and they're not teaching you to think of ways. Everyone just thinks they got to go get a job and they got to work and this, but there's different ways of doing things. And I think that we just don't do that because it's not what we've been taught.
Yeah.
I think we're living in a time where we're extremely judgmental and quick to treat people as disposable. I really do. We've all seen it in the media, some of the stuff that's gone on with people saying the wrong thing and doing the wrong thing and
Canceled
and fired, right? I think at this part of my life now, I'm more interested to see how people recover from a massive failure than I am to burn them at the stake, right? Like, I've seen so many people turn their lives around from making a mistake. And I find now I'm more interested in hearing about, hey, how'd you get yourself out of that?
Yeah.
How'd you fix that? Instead of me going, you're an idiot, right?
Yeah.
You put $1 million up your nose and you want me to feel sorry for you? Get away from me, right?
Yeah.
Now I'm like, why'd you do that, man? Why'd you do that to yourself? And more importantly, how'd you get out of that and get to here?
Yeah. Because I'm always interested in hearing, like, you always hear those stories of these guys that like start these companies and then they go bankrupt. And then all of a sudden they come back with another company.
Yeah.
Like, how do these guys do that?
Well, a lot of people's businesses that go bankrupt, they end up never touching their personal money, right? Like, smart guys use other people's money.
How are they smart enough to get somebody else's money after going bankrupt?
It just happens.
They're smarter than
they let you think.
You know what it
right?
is? You know what it is? A lot of people think, an entrepreneurial person is someone who starts businesses and is successful and sells the business 2 years later or continues to run a business, make millions of dollars. I know an entrepreneurial person is someone who thinks outside the box and has the ability to build relationships with people. That's what I think an entrepreneur is. Because I belong to this entrepreneurs network group, and I talk to young people all the time that come in and talk to me like, hey, I got my headshot done with my $2,000 suit. Like, what do you think? I'm like, it looks good. What are you gonna do? Like, all right, what are you thinking? Like, well, what do you think of my headshot? And I'm like, well, it's great, but I don't really care. I mean, what are you gonna do? Where does the rubber hit the road? Like, what are we doing next? It's my whole thing. Goals without timelines are just dreams, right? What's your plan? Do you want to buy Tim Hortons? You're looking for the money for the franchise fee, right? Is that what you're looking for? You want to start a trucking business? You want to, figured out a way to purify people's water in their house for $8? Like, what is it, right? And so, and like, some entrepreneurial people never start a business, but they have that ability to think outside the box and to look for opportunities that other people might just blow off, right?
Yeah.
And there's accidental entrepreneurs, guys that have a business that maybe their dad ran and they continue to run it well, and they don't look at themselves as entrepreneurs. I just go to work and I pay the bills. Well, no, you're running a business with 40 guys and you're doing well and you're an entrepreneur. No, well, I just run a trucking company, right? So a lot of people throw that word around now, being an entrepreneur, and it's like my teacher's calling me disruptive. It's not always accurate, right? Don't stop thinking outside the box.
We sat down to dinner maybe a month ago?
Yeah.
And just kind of made me think of this, but I thought it was pretty interesting at the time where you were talking about how your company was rebranded,
Yes.
and it's been a successful company for many years, and
Yeah.
I mean, it didn't really have to change, but what kind of what prompted that?
Well, it's not my company, that particular company.
Well,
right?
oh, sorry, you're higher up, you're a part of it.
Yeah. So you know, I think the company hired a consultant and wanted to just kind of look at everything, and somebody said, "Hey, you guys should try this." Little bit of a name change, some color changes, some changes to a website, and it was done because in a mature business can go along for 10, 20, 30, 40 years and with the same customers and doing the same thing, and you kind of fall into a bit of a rut there. And if you want to take that company to another level, you need to tell your story, and rebranding tells your story. And um, you see a lot of companies that sort of change their logo or change their name a little bit, and it draws that attention to, hey, we are looking to the future and we are trying different things, and that's why we did that. That's why we did that. And
Like nothing sparked it from like public backlash.
no, nothing like that. Nope. No. I mean,
it's just like almost like a need or a feeling or a need, or just
we
with
wanted
the people in the company just to constantly progress or grow, or
they wanted to tell their story of who we are and what we do, right? Who we are, what we do, and why we do it, and what benefits we are to certain industries in Western Canada, right? And where before we just kind of, those guys do that over there. We wanted to be, for lack of a better term, better known.
provides more value.
Yes, and you know what? I mean, you see it with companies that change their website and change their logos or whatever. It's more than that. It's more than that. It's telling your story. It's telling your story about who you are, where you've come from, and what you've done. Wild Rose Motocross needs to, I think, tell that story a little bit more, like I mentioned earlier, because I don't think, I'm assuming the membership over there is good now, and that there's a lot of riders, and those guys need to know that story. Those people need to know that story, so that when they're asked about the park, or if there's any criticism thrown their way, they can say, "Hey, this is why we're here. This is how we're here, and this is what we do. We create a family environment for every level of rider." And it's no different than any business. You can tell your story. Like, I don't know the story behind your dad's business, really. I know a little bit. Definitely don't know yours, right? But they've both been around for a long time, right? Both successful, and continue to do big stuff, but nobody really knows. And maybe your guys maybe you guys wanted to leave it that way. I don't know, but I think for mature businesses to stay in that zone, you gotta tell your story, and maybe motocross needs to retell its story.
That's a good point.
Right? Maybe motocross in general needs to retell its story, and I got to be clear about this. I think there's great people involved all the way across the country, right? I think there's a lot of people that have made money off the sport. There's a lot of people who made businesses out of the sport. I think those people need to be there. I do, because without them, there's nothing, right? There's got to be a risk taker at the top somewhere, right?
Yeah.
And that risk taker, there's always going to be the criticism. They don't pay enough for this. They don't do this. And they do that. But they're the guys that took it on.
Yeah.
Right.
And maybe going back to like, I'll say in quote, like telling the story.
Yeah.
Maybe if we think of a way to rebrand the sport,
right.
And obviously that's the duty of the community and the riders and the families within it, and then also the industry itself. Like maybe we will see our sport grow. But a lot of what I hear is always just it's it has a bit of a negative stigma to it, but like I don't see it that way at all. Like I see it as a sport that has I've learned more in racing than I think I would have ever learned in school, and I've built more friendships, relationships, and business relationships in racing than I think I would have. Like, I think I've made more connections in racing than I would have ever made by going to school or making a LinkedIn account.
Running a business, or maybe
Yeah,
not that, but
I don't know, but like, do you think you and I would have really started a podcast if
No,
we hadn't met
definitely not.
racing? Or
no.
like honestly, I met you through racing, and I look at you as a valuable connection and a valuable relationship, and somebody that I feel provides value to my life that is going to help me in the long run. And I look at a lot of people like that now, like you said, like treating racing as a business. That's how I look at my racing, and that's I don't ever look at people as disposable. Like, anybody I meet in racing, I consider my friends.
Yeah.
But I also consider it as, yes, it's a business, and it can help me progress, not just in this business, but in my life in general. Like, I feel like I could call a handful of people today and not just have a job, but have a career.
Yeah.
Because of this sport.
Yeah. Yeah, and I and it's that family atmosphere that is prevalent at racetracks that does that, right? People get drawn in. Like,
and it makes those relationships genuine.
Exactly. Like, and you have that common interest and that common goal, and that can also cause people to fight and have conflict too, right? I mean, not everyone's gonna always be on the same page, right? Like, there's things at racetracks that drive me crazy, right? Drive me crazy from a professionalism standpoint. But it doesn't never stop me from going there.
Yeah.
Right. And I always thought, if we could just change this or tweak that, maybe you draw in the bigger, better sponsors, the better level. But then I got to say this, like, the last few years, the advertising for the races in Calgary, like, they're terrible.
Non-existent.
If I didn't know from talking to people that are still involved, I'd have never heard there's a national in Calgary this year.
Yeah, well, a lot of people are like, what? I talk to are like, well, what do you mean? I thought it's on Father's Day weekend. Like, no, it's not anymore. It's on now it's not back on Sunday, but no one had any idea that it was on Saturday, that it was the first week in June or the last weekend in May. No one had any idea.
And no TV, no radio.
Nothing.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, so I
think they're learning from that.
Yeah, well, it's a new thing, right? They're going to learn as they go.
I mean, to me, that's a professionalism thing. I think, like, people think, professionalism, everyone has to dress better and talk better. No, like, do a better job.
Yeah,
just do a better job, right? And
that being said, too, like, your opinion on that is, it has zero emotional ties, like maybe you and I would have, because we're in the sport, we're in the industry, and we're friends with those guys that are running the series. But I mean, your opinion is, like you said, outside looking in.
I am 1,000% now just an observer. I was really just an observer when my son was racing. While some people might tell you I was a royal pain in the ass at times, because I was so adamant about safety and you've never raced, you know what you're talking about. I said, well, I'm tired of seeing that group of guys crash their brains out on that specific obstacle. Maybe you need to change it. Maybe you need to slow that section down, right? And then it took a few other people to say some stuff, and I still probably don't know what I'm talking about, but I'm just an observer, someone who spent a lot of money in there, and I always just wanted to see it safe. That's all. Wanted to see it. Just wanted to see things safe, and challenging, obviously. And for you guys, I mean, you have to separate there has to be that stuff there to separate, top from the bottom. But I think I just think the whole thing needs a new set of eyes.
Yeah. I think going back to what you were saying a little bit, almost every single person I talk to on a regular basis is from the track, right? Like that's a whole community that I think kind of is missing in society a little bit. Like I don't even know my neighbors, and it's kind of like everyone kind of craves that community at the track because everyone's there. It's the same group of guys there every year, and it's awesome. Like I feel like I've lived 10 lifetimes just from going to the track and all the lessons I've learned from racing. And
I've always said to people that where you go to work, whether it's your own business or you're working for somebody else, like that's where you go to make a living, but you have to make a life on your own. And don't expect your employer to make that life for you. You got to make that on your own. Right. And that's why places like Wild Rose are such a great place to go, because that's your life. It's your guys' life. That's what you love to do. That's what you work for. That's what you get after, right? Just don't let it suck you into the abyss. Right? When I see a guy like Michael Essie say, I can't believe this place is in the middle of nowhere. I mean, the guy's raced all over the world, right? And Calgary's one of his faves.
It's one that stands out.
It's one he likes, one he loves, right? Right?
It's not because of the track.
Right. So,
just because of where it is and the atmosphere.
Yeah.
It's like to me it is a shame that I was just going to say, like, it's a shame that it's not more well known within the city, but I think it's getting there. It's growing. Like every year I see new faces, and a lot of them are all people that look like they went and bought a $3,000 or $2,000 hunk of shit on Kijiji, and they show up in their running shoes and jeans, and they're a hazard out there on the track. But I mean, that kind of makes it crappy for guys like myself and Jared that are trying to train there. But on another note, like, those are the people that could potentially be contributing to our salaries.
Yeah.
And it's 100%. Like those are the people that are making our sport grow. And it actually, like, I get stoked when I see like some random guy show up that I've never seen before, because then it's like cool, like this is becoming like more of a mainstream thing in our city. Like I think this year, and even a little bit last year, it had to have been like record numbers for memberships, or even just gate entries at the track. It even though it struggled a little bit with weather, but I think if you went on a day-to-day basis, the numbers had to have been up. I think that's cool.
Well, and even though like bike sales are down, still you're seeing lots of new guys at the track. There's tons of people at the track always. Yeah. But dealerships say that the sales are down, and like the Alberta economy is not doing that good. But it's pretty cool to see a lot of new guys out there. And I think going back to the stigma a little bit, I think a lot of people don't really understand our sport for whatever reason. They think, like, when I talk to people at work, they're like, oh yeah, well, like, what's your best trick, or what's this and what's that. It's like people just think that motocross is just like a party atmosphere or whatever, but they don't really see like the elite athlete side of it. I don't know how to change that or how to fix it. Or
well, I think there's so many different outlets for it though. Like like I'm trying to think of one other sport that's kind of like that. Like
downhill mountain biking.
Yeah,
I've been to Crankworks at Whistler and seen. Yeah, it's like, oh my God, what is this? I stumbled into that by accident. Yeah, I was up there for something else, and I was like, what's the deal here? And I was like,
but maybe there isn't everywhere. Another sport like ours though, where it's like there's so many different outlets. Like you got your guys from an Eli Tomac and a Jeffrey Hurlings all the way to, like, Phil probably doesn't even know, but like an Axel Hodges or
different. There's a
93,
wide
number 93 or something.
96.
96.
Yeah. It does. Yeah, it
does some cool stuff.
Plays around in his backyard.
Does some cool stuff.
Yeah, making millions, and probably gets shit faced every night.
You brought up the fact of motocross being that party atmosphere, and that's one of the things that bothered me. And I think it hurts the sport. I grew up playing hockey. I don't remember my parents like sitting in the stands, drinking beer, staying overnight, doing an all-nighter, partying it up. And maybe that's my problem, But, if I wanted to be a big money sponsor, that bothers me. That part of it bothers me because I see the athleticism there and the level of effort that you guys put in. And I believe, and I've always deemed it the clown show, I don't think it's cool. And I think it takes away from the sport. And a lot of people disagree with me. I've had this argument with people, like lots. But, from a professional standpoint, I think it could be better.
I'm 50-50 on that one. I don't like it for, like, I got nothing against those guys and whatever, but I just think like the Axel Hodges and those guys that are just kind of promoting that lifestyle, which it's a fun lifestyle and a lifestyle I'm sure a lot of kids want to live.
Yeah.
I think that still generates sales, and that's why those guys are making so much money, which sure can roll over to us.
Yeah.
In the long run, but yes, it does hurt the racing side of things.
I think it does. I think it does.
Yeah, I think just like the general public doesn't really, if they actually like looked into what we do and like what kind of limits we're pushing, like heart rates and everything for 30 minutes, they'd be like, oh wow, I didn't know you can do that on a dirt bike. I thought it's just like you twist the throttle.
Yeah, they generalize.
Yeah, it's
like
a generalization.
That side of the sport convolutes the other side.
Yeah.
And but I bet there's some people out there shaking their head at me right now over bringing it up. But I mean, I know that I don't go to as many races anymore, just because my son's, somewhere else. And, but that always just could never figure that out. There's this big sign at the park. It says no alcohol.
Yeah.
But at certain events, it's just a bloody free for all. And I'm like, am I reading that sign wrong? Is that in French? Because I'm like, is that me or what? Right? Maybe they should add something to that sign that says, no factory rides given out today. Right?
Yeah.
And they can put that sign up at the hockey rinks too, right?
Yeah.
The 8-year-old Pee Wee class is not up for NHL contracts this month, right?
Yeah.
As a reminder to people
Yeah.
hey, chill out, have fun, and if your kid decides that he wants to take it somewhere, then away you go, right? But
yeah, I think that I still don't understand it sometimes. Like people, like for instance, my wife's stepmom, she came and watched us at the track one time, and she's like, "Oh, I don't see this as any more interesting than NASCAR." I'm like, I just don't understand it. I'm like, this sport is so interesting, and it's such a rush to watch. Like for me, I don't know if it's just different from the outside looking in, but it's just, I don't get how people aren't grabbing onto it. It's such a, like, there's so many different variables, and it's such a technical sport in so many ways, like from your mental side to your physical side to like the bike setup and all that. It's such an interesting sport to me.
It's more technical than people will.
Yeah.
That people are, involved in it. They don't.
Yeah, I guess if you're not in it, you don't really understand the whole thing. But
and you don't. I guess that's another thing too, is you don't really have that info, like as an external spectator. Like I listen to, like I agree. I think it's the greatest sport ever. But I think any sports are awesome. But like obviously this one I'm pursuing, the one I'm in, and I love it. But I listened to Pulp MX episode,
right?
And he was talking about our appeal, like the sports appeal, and he was talking to, it was actually like an external consultant, like some sort of other media personnel from another sport. It might have been NASCAR or something. And his first, I think the first thing he pinpointed as to why it's difficult for an outside sponsor to come into our sport is the promotion is intermittent. And whereas in like a sport like NASCAR, like there's the giant logo that they pay for that's on the hood of the car.
You always see it, and
you're in the ear of the crew chief or the mechanic, right? Or you can hear the guy talking while he's driving.
Yeah.
And whereas the only sponsorship promotion you get in like Supercross is when the guys mention his
Yeah,
sponsors
on
at
the
the end of the
podium, yeah.
race.
Yeah. It's a different setup for sure.
And then I guess it's the same thing too, where it's like maybe people can relate more with NASCAR because they drive their cars every day, and maybe they want to swing their off ramps a little wider than usual. Whereas dirt biking is just like something that's totally foreign and hard to relate with.
Right.
And yeah, I don't know that. Like, I think that's a tough one, but you can definitely tell with Supercross, like they're trying to make it more relatable, like doing the makeup to mud thing with trying to get more girls involved. And I know like that's Husqvarna's big campaign, is trying to make their brand with riding more of a lifestyle brand, so it, like, people are intrigued to build this lifestyle around motorcycles. Like, so the effort's there, it's just maybe it's moving at a really slow rate, or maybe it needs to be shifted a smidge.
Well, they did hear the other day that they're talking about adding at least one-way communication in the headsets, and they want to. Well, I don't know if they want to, or I don't know if someone's just suggesting it, but it would be huge if you could get at least one-way communication from the rider to the mechanic, and then you could sell a package to the spectator, and they could listen in, and they could get more of an understanding of what's going on, right?
Mm-hmm. Right. You know, you touched on one thing there. You mentioned mainstream, and you mentioned ladies. Like, it's 2019. Why are the women not racing for the same money that the men are?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Or at least on the same stage.
It's getting smaller and smaller.
The same coverage, the same everything. This is 2019, people. Right? You want to bring more people into the sport? Do that. Right?
Yeah,
actually, have the same benefits.
You get
the same benefits you guys should have.
Yeah, they do the makeup to mud thing, but there's no. Where do the girls go race?
I don't know.
That is a good point.
They don't have that in the States, and I think like if you get like girls attached to it, then all of a sudden, even if their boyfriend or husband or whatever is not even in the sport, then they'll watch it with their wife or girlfriend or whatever.
I'm equality is important. Still we're not there.
They're doing better in Canada though. The women have a pretty good series.
They do. Yeah, like I said, I've been away from it for a bit, but I mean, my opinion,
it's lacking though.
If a woman,
maybe not in Canada.
Like if a female racer puts in the same effort you guys are putting in, spends the same money on her bike that you guys spend, why don't she race for the same money? Right. So, again, just outside eyes looking in. Right.
Yeah. So, me and my dad have been talking a bit lately, and it's come up a few times. Yeah, my parents kind of wish they never got me into the sport, kind of in a way, just because of all maybe the injuries or all the maybe the sport can seem unfair at times. But yeah, I'm just wondering if you ever kind of felt that way as a parent.
Oh, definitely. There was, like when Brody got burnt that time, that was awful. That was awful. And I'd said to him, he had a couple surgeries, skin grafts and whatnot, and we were sitting in the children's hospital, and he's like 15, I think, and I was like, and it was ugly.
Yeah, I remember that day.
Yeah, it was ugly. And I said to him, I said, hey, why don't we pack this in, and let's go buy a boat and go to the lake and let's do some different stuff. And he's like, no, I'm good. I'm good, Dad. I'm good. And I think that's where, like, oddly enough, after that, that's where I think Brody progressed the most. And I was like, oh, that was a bit of a, man, this sport can be unforgiving. But now everybody knows Brody went away, joined the military, and lives out in another province, and he has a dirt bike. And 3 or 4 days a week, he gets on his dirt bike right on the military base and goes rides. And he's got a whole bunch of other guys into just riding. And, he said to me, he goes, Dad, I just love riding my dirt bike. I don't want to race anymore, but I just like going out and riding my dirt bike. And he goes, it's a stress reliever for me. And he goes, I'm always going to love riding my dirt bike. So as a parent, I'm like, hey, you know, I gave him something that he could do for the rest of his life. There's lots of people that ride, and they're obviously see it at the vet races, where guys are riding in their 60s and 70s, and but that just, you know, Brody has a bike in his garage that he keeps nice and clean and gives him something to do. And but I think every parent has probably run through that in their head. I think it's a fair observation for a parent to have, is like, you know, I bought my kid a little dirt bike. I didn't think it was going to turn into this, you know, this level of commitment, for one thing, the financial aspect, as you mentioned, and they can really get hurt. So I've had that conversation. I have, but I think now, I regret some of the things that I did, some of the approaches that I took, in that time, but I don't regret getting Brody a dirt bike. No, I don't.
Like, going back, do you think, like, was there ever a time where you felt like it could have been something bigger, like he could make a living at it, be a career? Or...
You know, I never thought that way. I just wanted to give him the tools to do it the best of his ability,
and he could figure it out on his own.
Could figure it out on his own. Like, I'm very, very proud of myself that when he was, you know, 8, 9, 10 years old, I wasn't that dad out there. You got to jump that. Like, Brody was probably one of the last guys to figure out jumping. And the day that he did it, the day that he jumped the 110, you probably remember this day. He decides to jump the 110 the day that Jared and Dean Wilson are at the track for that breakfast television.
Oh yeah, it was muddy. Oh, that was a different time.
It was like,
yeah, I remember that.
You were there too, I think. It was like breakfast television comes to the track, and Dustin says, "Oh, Brody, you can come out and you can ride around." And Jared and Dean Wilson was here because he raced the national,
promoting the national.
I
think it was muddy. That it was like a little bit muddy that day.
And Dean Wilson was on 250 Kawasaki, I remember, and Brody goes out on the track, and I see him like eyeing up the 110, and I'm like, oh, maybe this is the day he's going to do it. And Jared and Dean come up behind him, and I mean, they are tapped, like blah 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 blah, and they hit and then Brody decides to hit the 110 right between them. I'm like, of all times and then
I do remember this. I remember,
right? He just straight up, dead sailor, straight down, right? And these guys are like sideways beside him, and then I thought, oh, I bet you he just crapped his pants for sure, right? He had no idea they were coming up behind him, and then he landed, and then Dean and Jared came back up and came back the other way, and then Brody cut the track and came back, and then he did it like 4 times in a row, and he came over and he's like, "Dad, I did it." I'm like, why would you pick a time like that to try? And then, so I'm proud of the fact that he did that on his own, without me being crazy moto dad saying, "Hey, you got to start jumping this stuff, or you're just never gonna." And that's what I mean. I don't know a lot about motocross, but I know that you cannot push your kid to do something that he's not ready in his head to do. So I'm proud of that. I'm not proud of the fact that Brody and I had some knockdown, drag out fights about motocross, right? You know, he threw a mountain bike at me in my garage because I pissed him off to a high level, right? And I regret that stuff. And but it comes back to what I said earlier about the father-son syndrome, right? Hey, I'm doing all this for you over here, and I ask you to do one thing over here and you don't do it. Crash, bang, boom, there's a fight. That's what I regret. And that may have happened with him playing football or playing hockey or whatever, right?
Yeah, that could happen with anything. It's anything in life. Like,
it can. Yeah.
Like, kind of when I was dealing with my concussion issues, and Dom was trying to get me to go get help, and I refused until I hit the point where I figured out that I needed to go get help. It's kind of the same thing as you pushing your kid in, like, to do a jump or whatever. It's like, you can only tell them, but until they've hit the point where they're ready to do it, that's when they're going to do it.
Right. yeah, when you guys have kids of your own, you'll realize that no matter what it is, if your kid's not ready to do it, they ain't gonna do it, right? You can only give them the tools to get them to a certain level. I mean, doing your chores and cleaning the house is another thing, right? But whether it's sport, whether it's school, or whatever it is, yeah. And I think I regret. I think I regret, um, you know, buying and doing things to do with racing that we didn't need. We didn't need it, right? We didn't need all the swag, so to speak, right? We didn't need that stuff. And like I said, disclaimer: there are people out there that go to the track in motorhomes and nice trucks and all that sort of stuff, and it works for them.
Yeah.
I regret doing that.
But that's kind of like how we're maybe talking away from the podcast, but that's just kind of where the bar is set and where people, or well, I guess we did touch on it, where like
Right.
people come into the sport and they feel overwhelmed because that is where the bar is set. People think they need all these things to succeed, where that's really not the case. Like I mean, I tell some of the parents around the track that, and I coach their kids, like if there's some kid in the States that could come up here and hop on a stock motorcycle and whip your kid's butt, you don't need that motor or that or that pipe or whatever. Like you can get the job done with minimum amounts. It's investing the money into the areas that count, like riding schools and learning technique or eating healthy foods or just all the stuff, all the behind the scenes stuff that people like, because we look up to pro racers growing up and all we see is the cool bikes they have and the cool lifestyles, and that's what you think kids think they need to get there. But you don't see the behind the scenes stuff of all the mental training those racers are doing, sitting on their living room floors, meditating or stretching or waking up at 5 a.m. to make a massive breakfast or meal prepping every other night to have quality food for an entire week when they're traveling from track to track or from race to race. It's all that extra stuff. That's the stuff that feeds progression.
And I think in a lot of cases the younger kids, I don't think they're the problem with looking up and seeing all that stuff. It's the parents. Like, I'd bring home all this bling for Brody's bikes, and he didn't care. He's like, oh, do the suspension. Yeah. Do the suspension at some point. Like not. I don't think every 65cc kid out there needs they don't need it, right? You don't. And I did all that stuff, and I regret doing that stuff because I think it takes away from what you're doing, and that's riding the bike, right? Brody didn't want that stuff ever. And then too, like, do we really need to buy a brand new 250F every season, like for a junior kid? Probably not, right? Like, look after your bike, do the maintenance, do the motor over the winter. But no, I'd go buy 2 new bikes, sometimes 3 new bikes, and they'd be lined up, and he'd ride one and barely wear out one in a year, right? So I regret that. And I was a guy that could afford it, and the people that can't afford it get themselves into trouble trying to keep up with that crap.
Yeah, that's I find that's
they try to keep up with it, and then they remortgage their house, and they max out their line of credit, and they're making payments on stuff that they shouldn't be making payments on, and the kid turns 12 and says, I want to go play baseball. Dad's paying it off for the next 10 years, right? Because dad took it to that level. The kid didn't. Dad did.
Yeah, I find that's the problem with our sport, is the bar set up here when it should be here. Sure, there are some people that are able to play up here, but it shouldn't be. People shouldn't think that they have to be up here to make it happen.
No, I remember you at like 10 or 11 years old. You pull your bike out of it was an old CR85 piece of crap. I'm like, geez, man, his dad needs to buy him a new bike. and you had
Pull out
two
of the horse trailer.
in the horse trailer. You pulled them out of the horse trailer, right? And I walk by, and here you are. You got both bikes laid over, and you're taking like the cover, that one cover. That it was a CR85. You're taking
probably.
You're taking the cover off one bike to put it on another because there's no more place to put JB Weld on the other cover, right? And I was like, you know what, this kid's got it going on, right? And then I walk over, and Brody's got two brand new bikes there, and I'm like, goes a quarter of the speed of what Keelan's going at the time, right? And I'm like, I'm doing it wrong. Like, I'm doing it wrong. And so, and then I remember you telling me like 2 weeks after that, he goes, yeah, my dad had a few beers, and I think I got him convinced to buy me a new bike, and then it never happened. You didn't get enough beer in him, right? Yeah. But I mean, and again, not taking away from your dad, because he supported you like through it all, right?
Yeah.
And I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with trying to give your kid the best equipment or trying to set him up the best you can.
Right.
But yeah, at a point you don't need all that extra stuff.
Right. And
there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
I feel like it puts pressure on other families that can't do that.
Yeah. True. Right. And
because then their kids come, they're being like,
right.
oh, well, little Tommy has this, and why can't beat him because I don't have that.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I think
Brody never said that to me ever.
That's not the case. But it is. I think it is an issue. But there's nothing wrong with wanting to give your kid the best of the best.
No,
because it feels good when
it's just
you pull out a FMF fatty and you put it on their 50. Like
but the problem with that is like when the kid gets good. The kid gets good and he gets on a 125 or 250. Sometimes the parents have spent too much money on the other stuff. They've spent too much money on the 50s and 60s and all the gear, and then they're out of it, right?
Yeah.
They're tapped, right? The bank's knocking on the
door. Or the kid gets on, he has the works, then he gets on
something
bigger bikes, and then he's struggling trying to figure out how to make it work on the track, and he's not accountable. But I don't know. I think that's just the journey that people try to figure out along the way, is what's the right way of doing it.
But there are some things there. Like, to go back to your original questions, there's some things I regret, and I'm not angry about it. I'm not pissed about it, but I'd sure take a few things back for sure. Yeah. And but it's funny, through all of that stuff, through all the phases of racing, the thing that impressed me the most was the level of commitment from the people that looked after that track. Yeah. I think when I think of a proud thing, is the people who, and continue to do it to this day, whoever's on the board now, and whoever's on the board 15, 20 years ago, right? I'm proud of that. I'm proud that there's that community there, right? Yeah. That's the positive part of the sport.
Yeah.
That's great. Is, when somebody's bike breaks down and other people trying to help them.
Yeah.
Or somebody gets hurt and they're hauling them off the track, and that's what, helping each other out. And
I think even just sitting here having this conversation too, like I have, like sitting back and thinking about it, I have more of an appreciation for that facility.
Yeah.
Just, when you put it to light that there is this band of people behind it that have put hard hours in to make it what it is. It's like, and to look at every aspect of it, that it is a place that provides a community and an escape and a training grounds to better yourself, not as an athlete but as a person. I have a massive appreciation for it.
I think that's what drew me there. That's what drew me there the most, and I hope that it's there forever. I do. People say, "Oh, nothing lasts forever." Well, nothing lasts forever in its current form. But if you're willing to change things up on a regular basis, then the basis will be there forever. So there you go.
Is there anything you want to ask us? Put us on the spot?
Yeah, I guess, you know what? I guess, what do you guys want to do? What do you guys want to do?
Ride their bikes.
What do you want to do? What do you want to do after all this conversation? What do you want to do to continue to make racing viable and realistic?
I've got a crazy idea that I've had in my head for a few days, but I'm not going to bring it up because then I'm held to it, and it's a pretty intense thing. So
Why not?
I can't. Bring
Remember,
it
we
up.
can cut it out.
I can't bring it.
Don't
up.
bring it up. Don't bring it up. To keep it to your chest, right? If that's yours.
Well, I can bring it. I guess
own
we can cut it, but
Yeah.
So I had this idea to race the whole national series next year, and then ride my road bike from Walton home and try and raise money for mental health and concussion awareness.
Dude, why do you not want to bring that up?
Yeah.
Because
why do you want to
like,
cut
I don't
that
know.
out?
I'm still
That's
figuring
badass.
out if I can do this.
See, that's something right there. That's something right there that I could probably get people to stand behind.
Yeah, I know. I thought of it. I've
Oh,
been
yeah.
thinking about this.
I would do that too.
I have. Yeah, I was gonna ask you about it, but I haven't been able to.
The bent road ride.
Yeah, there you go. I haven't been able to get this thought out of my head for the past couple of days, and I'm just like, this is a crazy idea.
That would be gnarly.
And it's like I'm trying to think of like how I can prep for it without giving up any of my like. I want to still be in top moto form.
Yeah.
But I don't want to give up. Like
But I guess if you do it at the end of the season.
yeah, you do it at the end. I was gonna do it like the day after Walton, ride home and try and raise some money. Raise some money for mental health.
That's cool.
Yeah,
That is cool.
I thought it was a good
that's a
idea, but
brilliant
it's a
idea.
it's a heavy task. It's 3,500 kilometers. I only cycled like.
And you got to go. Well, you could go through the States, I guess.
I would probably. It's like an extra 500K to go through Canada.
Yeah, it is.
Dang.
Yeah, because it's like an extra 2 hours.
I was thinking, so I already worked it out. I figure if you go 160 kilometers a day, which is pretty easy, you can do that. If you do it 10-hour days, it's super easy to do 200K.
Yeah.
That,
200K all
see,
day.
that's thinking outside the box.
That's what I've been
Yeah,
thinking.
that's
That's what I've
like-
been thinking the last.
That's
few
TV
days.
coverage stuff, buddy.
Yeah.
You know, there was a guy in an older gentleman in Cochrane. I think he was like 65, and he ran some ridiculous amount of marathons in a year for a fundraiser, and I mean the news were all over that.
What year was this?
It was just recently.
Yeah, there was this guy, Eddie Izzard. He ran 27 marathons in 27 days, and he's not even an athlete. He's just like a stand-up comedian. And he went and did it. So I'm like, well,
Really?
this guy can do this.
What's that? There's like some musician that did something wild. Like, his name's on the tip of my tongue, but he walked from New York all the way to like LA.
Oh, what's his name? Mike Posner or whatever.
Yeah.
That guy, yeah, he did it. He just
Yeah.
walked.
Yeah, just walked. from
Why
New-
Why do you want to keep that to your chest?
Well, because I don't want to say I don't know if it's feasible to do it. Like I've been talking to some
doesn't even
people.
know if he's going racing.
Well, yeah, I'm trying to. I
You
want to
need
go
to-
racing.
you
I
need
like
to-
100% want to go racing, but I don't know if it's possible yet. I'm trying. Like I'm.
So
He needs an angel investor,
I
a guy with lots of money to help him go racing.
That's something that could go full circle though. If I'm committed to doing something like that, it could help me out both ways, right? Like I want to. Like I'm not just doing it to grab attention for myself. It's I want to bring attention to mental illness, and that's something, and concussions, and that's something that I've struggled with over the years. So that's something near and dear to me. So that's something I want to give back to.
I think that is awesome.
Yeah, that'd be a
And
massive
that's-
personal.
I
thing,
think
too.
that's. I think
All right.
that. Yeah,
We said it on the
that
pod,
almost
we're
brings
doing
a-
it.
Brings a bit of a tear to my
It's
eye.
a done deal.
Cut it out.
But to go back to my original question, I guess bluntly, when do you say, I can't get the level of support that I need, so I need to step away?
Yeah.
When is that? What's the magic formula there?
I don't know. That's a tough one. I feel like I know I'm at a point where I had a year where I had a lot of resources and a lot of things that I got to experience where I was like, man, this is what I've been missing, and I would hate to take a step backwards from that.
Yeah.
Because I know how much a lot of that stuff that I never had in the past contributed to some successes and some small victories, and it'd be really hard to take a step back, or it'd even just be hard to attain that stuff on a privateer level.
Yeah.
And I'm just at the point where I just want to have a steady rate up. I don't want to do this
Right.
and then do that. I just want to keep going.
Right.
And primarily because I feel like I deserve it. But on another note, like, the sport really doesn't owe me anything. I'm just another racer. So, but for me personally, like, I want to keep going, but there's not really anything there right now that I know of. Like, the phone hasn't rang, and
Right.
But that's just something that kind of constantly plays with your mind. It's
Right.
like I think about every day. It's like, man, do I take a step back here and maybe start focusing on leaning into my parents' business, or do I just call these guys relentlessly, or call everybody relentlessly? Like, which is something I've been doing to the point where it's borderline like annoying, or, well, it's definitely past that. But I don't know. That's a tough one to answer, because, like, I've always said to myself for the better part of 10 years is that I don't want to be 50 years old being like, man, like, I had this talent and I gave up too soon. Like, I should have just made a few extra calls, or I should have just spent a little bit more of my own money, or whatever. Like,
yeah,
I think that's
feeling.
a very,
but it's
very difficult question to
but the
answer.
thought is there with you guys, like, it's there.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
That, when do I, if I'm not going to get support, what level of my own debt am I going to incur
Yeah.
to continue to chase this?
Yeah. Like,
Right?
I threw 20 grand at it this year and I got no results. I got nothing out of it, but I still feel like there's that quote, I didn't come this far just to come this far. Like, I've put so much into it over the years, and
Right.
I know in my gut that I can do it, and I just don't want to. I can't walk away leaving it on the table.
Right.
It's a difficult thing, because this is like this. It's not just a sport you go and play on the weekends or whatever. It's something you devote your whole life to.
Right. So you guys don't think, like, do you think you would ever be comfortable or happy to just be a guy that, hey, I got a bike in the garage, I work full time now, and I got to go race the Super Saturday Series for another 10 years? Or when you're done, are you done?
I kind of go back and forth on this one. Like, me and my wife have quite a few discussions about this. I'm like, man, I don't know. Like, I kind of gave up racing in 2016, but that, like, I was suffering from some concussion symptoms, and I just I just need the goal. I just need the goal. I need to be chasing something.
Right.
And I'm getting bored at the track if I'm not going and we're there with a purpose. So, I mean, I'm sure a lot of racers feel this way. Like, you see Ryan Dungey, you didn't really see him for a couple of years after his racing. Now he's bought Geico Honda. So,
Right.
I think maybe after a couple of years of sitting in it, you maybe be able to go enjoy it more after you're done racing. But yeah, it's a tough one.
Because I guess you don't want to create that negative vibe in yourself.
Yeah.
To think about the end.
Yeah.
Right. But when you look, like, one of the reasons I think you guys had me here was talk about business of racing. And the way I'm wired is, okay, this is fun. I love what I'm doing, but I'm bleeding money.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. What am I going to do? Am I going to let all this running money run out? Or am I going to let the money run out and incur some debt to keep doing it? Then I start to think, the risk versus reward thing, right? From a money perspective, I don't even need to get into the whole other part of that statement. But, that to me is a question every athlete has to ask themselves, right? Is, what are my what are my timelines and my
Yeah.
goals, right?
Oh, I guess that's like,
And it all comes back full circle to why these teams don't have their ducks in a row to help guys like you make these decisions, right?
well, it's it when it's a privateer ordeal, it's kind of like gambling. Like you're
Yeah.
you're sitting there and you're not really sure which way it's gonna go.
Yeah, you can
And,
invest all this money and then all of a sudden you get hurt at the first round.
yeah, but I mean, I look at it now like a business, and I credit a lot of that to you and with mentoring me over the years, and some other people I've met in the industry, and also people outside of the industry. But it's like just with how I was raised and how I was educated over the years. I don't want to spend my own money on racing, and I was also pretty empathetic of my parents, where I didn't want them to spend money on racing either, and
Right.
I kind of put a timeline on it myself, because I know for a fact, like, if I went to my dad today and said, hey, like, I want to go racing next year, he'd be like, okay, what kind of rig should I buy? Like,
Yeah,
he'd be
yeah.
all in. He loves
Yeah.
it just as much
And
as
by
I
the
do.
way, you got to work 20 hours a day for me when you're home.
Yeah,
And I don't want to hear any complaining about it.
Yeah, you hold
And
it
I'm
over
trying to
my
get the clock changed so it's 30 hours a day.
head. Yeah,
Trying to
exactly.
adapt the new day.
That's right. We're going to add another day to the Randy Meston schedule
Yeah.
when Keelan's home.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just like kind of got to the point where I put a timeline on it. I was like, I can't even remember what year it was. Actually, it was 2017. I was like, if I don't get on a team, like, I'm just done. This is stupid. And but that winter, I like called basically everybody, almost every single team, at least the ones that I felt like I was worthy of being on, because I also believe I don't really want to call somebody if I just don't feel like I'm worthy.
You don't have the leverage or the you're not selling them something valuable enough.
Yeah, like I don't want to waste their time either.
Right.
Like it if I feel like I can align myself with that team and I can provide some sort of positive value, like whether being an underdog and they can hone me and make me a better racer, like I look at it that way. But I'm not going to call like a factory KTM or something a guy that's can't even barely cracks a top 10. Like, I'm not going to call factory KTM and say, yo, give me a Red Bull helmet.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was just kind of like where I was at. And like I told my parents, I was like I got to figure this out on my own, and if I can't, then I guess that's it. And I met Brent Carlson, who has been like that guy turned my career around, and that's just another guy, another team owner who just has a massive passion for the sport. Just loves it and loves seeing people progress, and that's his hobby. Like, he just likes helping guys out that he feels deserves it. But like I owe everything to that guy for where I'm at now, and the point I'm at in my career. Like, sadly, there's no contract signed, but I mean, if there is anything I could, like, let's say I'm 50 years old sitting in my rocking chair and 2 broken hips and whatever.
Yeah.
That is one thing I look back on and say, like, man, like that is one guy that I am like forever in a debt of gratitude towards. And if there's awesome. Any guy that I want to be like, it would be like him. Like, I want to be 45 years old, 50 years old one day with a ton of money and show up to the track and see a kid that I see something in and be like, hey man, like, I'm gonna give you a shot.
That's
like
that. Be an awesome feeling.
That's what I want to do. Like that. Like, Brent's inspired me to the point where, because I know what it did for me, and now I'm like, that's what I want to do. Man, if I had enough money right now, I would do it. Like, that's
giving back can be a good thing, you know. And I think I'm impressed that you think that way. That that's a good place to. It's a good thing to wrap your head around, right?
Yeah.
And it's
like
good.
honestly, that like going,
Yeah.
having that opportunity with him, like I look at it as like life changing.
Right.
Like it literally changed my perspective on so many things. It changed my perspective on my relationship with my family, my relationship with my girlfriend, how I view the industry, how I view business, how I view business relationships. Instead, like, because going through, I guess, leading up to that point before I had met Brent and the people that kind of introduced me to him, like, yeah, the sport it can be a vicious bitch, and like I didn't trust anybody because of situations I had been through. I'd been screwed by some sponsors and stuff, and people that had promised me big things, and so I was just like, it was just like it for a while. It seemed like a cruel sport, but at the same time, that could be on me and how I was handling that.
Yeah.
But once I met Brent, it was like it was almost like a dog that was abused and put in the pound. They're it's just like they're abused and they think everybody's abusive.
Yeah, show
And
them
they
some
get
love.
they get their new owner. The new owner shows them some love. They're kind of like a little iffy about it at first, but then they kind of learn to open up. That's kind of how I was with Brent. I was like, oh man, this guy says he's gonna help me out with all this stuff. I don't know.
Yeah.
And then everything he promised me, he went beyond.
Yeah.
And I was just like, man, like
that's an awesome
like
thing.
that's cool. Like he under promised, over delivered. And it's like I was like, but beyond just the financial side of things, like just that relationship and what he's taught me and what I've learned from how he manages people and his personal businesses and stuff like that. It's like man, just that, like I've learned so much just from having that one relationship in racing, more than a lot of things I've learned over the course of my life.
Yeah. No.
But,
I think without solid mentors in our life, it's sad. You know, some people. I mean, I've been fortunate to have a bunch of people that I can call mentors to myself. That and a guy right now who he's going to retire right away, and you know, I get a little teary eyed when I think about it because I'm going to miss him. I know he's only a phone call away or whatever, right? But I looked up to his style and his approach for a long time. You know, and you know, he was never a guy that said, you know, hey Phil, you know, don't do this or don't do that. He was just like, why don't you try it this way, right? Why don't you try it this approach? I've done this in the past, and it's helped me. Or hey, I'm seeing you going down the same path that I made a bunch of mistakes on, so why don't you just steer it to the left a little, right? I mean, and that's great. You have a relationship with that guy, and guys like that are great for the sport, not just yourself. They're for everybody, right?
Yeah, sport needs more of those guys.
Yeah, you do. Like
it's kind of sad that like, or it's not sad, but it's like I almost wish he was a little more in the limelight, because it's guys like him that people need to use as an example.
Wow.
Like it's team owners like him that people need to be like man, it's guys like that make our sport great.
Yeah, but guys like that don't like shoot for the spotlight, right?
No, and that's what's cool about him is he just loves the sport.
Yeah.
But then I think everybody else looks at other team owners like they're these big businessmen with broad shoulders and they're hard to approach and whatever. And it's like maybe they are, maybe they're not, but it's like man, if a guy like Brent was like, if he was like the flagship for our sport and the guys that are helping run the industry, like that, I think we'd be in a better place.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
Never know.
So, I guess we're gonna wrap this up.
Are you ready for bed?
I'm getting there, but I got one more thing I'm gonna say. We've all heard the term. People say, you know, the two definites in life are death and taxes, right? Death and taxes, death and taxes, death and taxes. I have a mentor of mine who is in his mid 80s, and continues to give solid advice to people. It says it's death and taxes, and there's change. And those are the three definites in life. If you want to live a really solid, healthy, good life, embrace change, because the world is moving so fast now, and things are changing so fast that if you don't change with it, you'll get left behind, right? Whether it's at your shop or whether it's in a trucking business, if you don't adapt and have a different view of things on a regular basis, you're gonna get left out in the cold, you know. And the world, I find, is becoming, we've always heard the term, "Oh, you're only as good as your last game," but the world is becoming a harder place, where what you did yesterday before the end of the day is over, people have forgotten about it sometimes, right? Yeah, you could do this great thing, and a couple months later, like, people barely remember it. So you got to stay on top of things, and you got to I drive an electric car. Always drove a diesel truck. Now I drive an electric car. So, I'm trying to keep up. And as I get older, I think, geez, what else is coming? And I'm not scared about it now. I'm excited about it.
Embrace it.
Yeah, I'm excited to see, like, how long is it going to be before everybody's like plugging in their car, right? Are we ever going to see like a hover car, right? Hey, like, I mean,
Can't tell if you're a hippie or a liberal.
I'm not a liberal. I'm not a liberal. Anyways, so
This is not a political podcast.
it's not a political podcast. Good, because I wouldn't have come if it was. But thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for
Yeah,
coming.
thanks
It's
for
been
coming on, Phil, and
a great conversation. It's awesome.